Welcome back to another Shift Change podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a legend on the show today.
They're fighting the best striker in their division, and they're telling you they're going to knock him out. And you're like, okay, we need to come up with a better strategy. To do the job, you got to have a little bit of an ego. You got to have skill sets.
If we do what he says, we're going to get better. Like, all we have to do is just commit.
You know, nobody likes being tired for fun, right?
My guest has coached athletes nearly at every level imaginable for over 20 years, college sports, Olympic environments, UFC Performance Institute. Now he's at the heart of the SEC in Texas A&M. Before that, he was my strength and conditioning coach and someone I would truly consider a mentor. He coached me. He shaped me into how I trained, how I approach preparation, discipline, and the leadership skills that I hold on to and value today. This man knows what standards are, how to handle pressure, and perform at the peak whenever it's called upon. Coach Bo Sandoval, welcome to the Shift Change podcast.
Man, great to be here, Andrew. Dude, thanks for that warm welcome. I gotta do my best to live up to that now, man. That was awesome. You got me juiced up, so I appreciate it.
No, it's awesome just to reconnect. It's been so many years. I think the last time I saw you was like maybe 2013 or 2014 at one of the national conferences. So it's been a long time.
Yeah, man. It's been a minute.
So yeah, so most people that are here are, at the firehouse, we got a bunch of, firemen who think they know fitness, strength and conditioning and stuff like that. And they try to pick my brain a lot. But when people hear strength coach, all they think about is the weight room. They just think about that big meathead in the weight room. How would you nowadays describe exactly what you do?
Yeah, fitness and strength and conditioning are definitely different. Those are two different genres of activity. I try to define strength and conditioning as it's more premeditated. It's a plan, which means, to start a plan or to start a roadmap, I got to have a destination. And So the first thing is formulating goals. And most folks, including myself from time to time with my own goal, like we have a really hard time identifying concrete goals. Typically what a goal sounds like in a general public is I want to lose a little bit of weight, or I want to get my blood pressure down. Or, it's just very general and vague. And so what a strength coach does is kind of help you nail down specifically what's that number, what's that range, what percentage of improvement are we looking for? So a real objective, a measurable, and then coming up with a strategy on how we're going to approach that objective. Maybe and this is where strength coaches are really handy, maybe there's prerequisites that you need to knock down to get to that goal that you may have to address first. The goal may be in an upper echelon of skills that you don't have yet. And so you've got to develop some foundation first before you get to that. So that's strength and conditioning kind of helps build a progression towards this objective. Whereas general fitness, that's exactly what it is. It's just to generally be active and be fit. There's no objective in mind. There's not a sound strategy to it. It's a bit more arbitrary completion of workouts. Whereas if you're training in a strength and conditioning program, you're training towards a specific goal. Every rep counts. Every rest period counts. Junk volume, you want to try to get that out of there. We don't need to be unnecessarily fatigued. Any extra energy needs to go towards recovery because we've got more progressive training coming down the pipe. So that's kind of how I separate the two. I think where strength and conditioning, you mentioned, when people think strength coach, they think weight room right away. Nowadays, when I think strength and conditioning, I think performance. What's the performance outcome that we're trying to get to?
Absolutely.
It's not what I look like. It's not what I feel like. It's how am I trying to perform? And that's kind of the big separator.
For sure. That's what I battle. That's what I battle at the firehouse is obviously this is their job, and we take our job very seriously. And what we do, we have to be ready at any moment. But we also got those guys who just want to look good. They want to imagine they're going to be on a calendar one day sometimes, or they just want to completely annihilate themselves and just get a huge pump, just be completely gassed and wrecked, and be like, "Yeah, I got to go work out." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, we also got 20 hours of our shift left. Like, how about you
Yeah.
reserve a little bit and be able to perform in the next 16 minutes?"
Right. Those kind of lessons, I think, people don't really, if they don't already have a conscience about it, they don't really figure those lessons out until it slaps them in the face. Unfortunately, they got to kind of experience that to be in a high risk, high stress situation and to not be physically prepared for it. That's a scary feeling. It's a really kind of enlightening feeling, which then typically leads to a better like preparatory road. But, like any athletic venue, yeah, for military first responders, emergency personnel, they're similar. Like to do the job, you got to have a little bit of an ego. You've got to have skill sets, and everybody operates differently. Some will rely heavily on that skill set to overcome some of their strength or fitness deficits. Others will rely on
Mhm.
experience to overcome maybe formal education and some of the fitness experience. Others may use their athleticism to overcome some of their bad decision making or lack of strategy. So they're all going to play it a bit different. And I think if you're talking to a real strength coach, a seasoned veteran, one thing they should be good at is kind of meeting you where you're at and understanding what you bring to the table, how you play the game, what your skill sets are, what your strengths and weaknesses are. And then it's a strategy discussion between the two in terms of, do we want to try to improve your weaknesses, or hey, let's just leave those by the wayside. We're just going to keep doubling down on your strengths. That's a strategy, and everyone has the choice to play the game how they want to. And so, a strength coach, they're going to try to meet you where you're at, and then start to proceed towards that, this pathway towards an objective or towards a goal that you're after. The thing that scares a lot of people about strength and conditioning is it requires consistency. Consistency is the scariest thing out there, right? To do
Yep.
something once, to like, squat 400 pounds one time, or to, I deadlifted, 600 pounds 14 years ago one time. That everybody's got those bookmark chapters in their life, right? It's what do you have access to right now, you know? So consistency is a really scary thing. That's why general fitness is typically so appealing, because it doesn't require consistency. It doesn't require specific adaptations. It doesn't require, a devotion or a push at any specific intensity to achieve a goal.
Yep. And I joke with the guys all the time that I might be a washed up former athlete, but I'm still one of the most well-rounded people at our department to be able to perform in any, modality that we got.
Yeah.
And some guys are like, "Well, you can't deadlift 600 pounds." Like, I don't care to deadlift 600 pounds no more. My body's healthy. I can do all the stuff, and then I can do a lot more whenever you get tired. And we get tired, I can keep pushing.
You know, it's funny when I was just talking about the ego thing. Like landmarks are nice; they're nice to talk about, and maybe even pull some comparisons to. But the key is like, what are you working towards? I mean, that's because as soon as you do something, we talk about this in hunting all the time. I work with a bunch of backcountry hunters that are constantly trying to go to these. We're talking to a guy right now he's going to be doing 4 hunts in the Afghan mountains, and all kinds of crazy altitude, dry areas, dry environments, and you know, he can't just simply rely on what he's done previously in Montana or what he's done previously in Wyoming or Idaho or any of these other. This is a different landscape. It's a different set of rules. So what you've done previously doesn't matter anymore. The experience will help you some because you're going to have some knowledge base, but how you're going to perform on that thing right now is that has to do with what you're doing right now, what you're doing here in the last, few months, several weeks. And so we try to constantly have this conversation. Like, as soon as you reach a ridge line, that's why they call them ridge lines, because guess what's in front of it? Another ridge line. And guess what's in front of that one?
Yep.
Another ridge line. So you're constantly going to climb up the slope, get on a ridge line, feel good about it. You're going to look out and be like, oh shit, there's another ridge over there, and it's a little taller. You're going to go down again, you're going to climb back up again. And that really is a periodization cycle of strength and conditioning. I mean, you're going to go down.
Absolutely. And we've talked about that. Like, that's the missing piece in my eyes as the fire department is that periodization. Like, we don't have that periodization uh to have an off season, an in season, a preseason, all that stuff. Like, guys come in, we get them hired, and they're working and training just for 30 years straight, essentially, till they retire.
Yeah.
But I feel like most of them, and it's kind of like we'll talk about it in a little bit later, but they don't understand threshold training. So everybody can be really good in the weight room, but as soon as we put our gear on, we start getting under that, start breathing air, and you start getting under that fatigue of that extra load. They don't know what it feels like to be under that threshold and then be able to stay at that 80-90% effort and keep pushing through that lactate and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I try to tell them, like, you don't know your threshold, so let's figure out your threshold, see what it feels like, and then learn to ride that line until you get comfortable, and then that threshold just constantly goes up.
Yeah.
But so many guys just don't want to ride that threshold.
Sure. Nobody likes being tired for fun, right? It's different when you're being
No.
tired for work, but for fun, it's like you kind of got to be interested. So that's one of the first things that I would say in a population like that. Number one, we can get to the periodization piece, but your traditional sports periodization isn't appropriate for that type of population anyway. I would say the same for like some of our military constituents, SWAT teams, other emergency personnel, first responders. I try to treat them like fighters, and we'll get more detail into this, but you want to stay within striking distance always. And so we say that about fighters because a lot of times their preparation time, they can get called for a short notice fight. They got to fight in 2 weeks. Well, you got to make weight in 2 weeks. And then fighting, if you don't make weight, you don't make money. Sure, every now and then they might find out about a card 12 weeks in advance and you've got some prep time for it. But generally speaking, as a philosophy, you've got to stay within striking distance. And I would say the same for a lot of these emergency personnel, meaning you don't need to be in peak, tip top, your best you've ever been all the time. One, that's unrealistic. But what you should be is somewhere within 85% of it. So then if I do have 2-week window or a 3-week window, I can climb a few percentage points and get closer to my peak. But if I'm nowhere near that and I'm down in the 60% range, 50% range, I'm still going to be subpar when it comes performance time, whether it's 2 weeks away, whether it's one shift away or 72 hours away. And so what we're getting at here is behavior and lifestyle. So it can't just be a periodized training regimen. It's behavior and lifestyle. So meaning, all those other hours when you're not on that 24-hour shift or that 48-hour shift or whatever it is, what are you doing to recover the system, take care of the system? It's just like maintenance on a car, right? What are you doing to grease the axles and pay attention to the transmission and the exhaust and all these other things? If your maintenance isn't well, then it's not even going to be accessible. You're not within striking distance when you're on that 72-hour shift now. And so before we ever get into, hey, man, I got to get you to squat or I got to get you to deadlift, first thing is like, what is your typical day like? How much time are you spending on your feet doing things versus laid up on the couch, eating shitty food, watching football all day? Like, understanding lifestyle. Then if you really want to help those folks improve, it's like, all right, well, if you got a kind of a sedentary lifestyle outside of work, how do we start to pivot that first? Then if we start to make some headway, we might turn some of that pivot into a little bit of training. And then later on, we might turn a little bit of training into a lot of training. And then you're going to have the opposite end of the spectrum, right? What I call the easy ones. Those are your diehards, which they're easy from a standpoint. They're going to be active and they're going to be engaged and want to do something. Now, they might still be meatheads and they might not want to follow a structured plan. These are your guys that just want to go and blow their biceps up and make their traps grow. Those guys, they're into aesthetics and looking hard or whatever the case may be. You got a different educational route with them. They have some good behaviors that we could feed off of, but we've also got some things that we need to tailor a little bit so it's a bit more performance related to their job. So they've all got a learning curve. It kind of circles back to my message on you got to figure out where they are and meet them where they're at. Because some, man, they want to do their job. They're passionate about their job, but they may not be passionate about lifting weights and running and being fit. That's an acquired skill. The same way as like people love to eat food. Some people just like to eat food because of the taste, whereas they need to learn how to eat food because it's fuel. And so eating for fueling versus eating for a good time, those are very different things. And so those aren't skills that we just pick up every day growing up in our households and going to school and do what that stuff isn't like necessarily inherent. You have to learn those skills. And unfortunately, we don't get to teach some of them until they're already They pass, some sort of accreditation process or go through an academy, and now you're a full-time fireman, and now they got to learn those lessons. We run into this all the time in athletics, man. There's so many like super talented 5-star Division I football players that don't know how to eat and don't know how to sleep. And I would even argue there's some in the NFL that don't know how to eat and don't know how to sleep. But they got incredible skills and they have incredible tactic and they have the ability to do this thing. Like I'm sure you've got some guys in the firehouse that are really good at certain skills. So it's just about meeting them where they're at, and then how do you put little pieces of the puzzle together to make it a complete picture eventually. So yeah,
For sure.
it's tricky,
And it,
but it's worthwhile. We're talking about human beings, so it's worth it.
Absolutely. And that was kind of that was going to be one of my future questions was what do you think one of the misconceptions that the general public has about these high level athletes that we're going to talk about that you've got the amazing experience to train and be around? What's one of those biggest misconceptions? And I feel like you hit it on the head is that they don't know. Like they're
Yeah.
just they're so talented that they haven't even just got the full picture of what they could be.
To master what they master on the field of play, whatever sport they're into, right? That in itself is a full time job. That is way beyond 40 plus hours a week. For many of them, it's closer to 100 hours a week. You add in like film sessions and other personal one on one stuff and skill sessions and things that they're doing. Then on top of that, if they haven't already learned, it's all the lifestyle stuff, diet, rest, and recuperation. Little things, dude, like doing their own laundry, cooking their own meals, everyday things that have been kind of catered to them, especially if you came through a Power Five school, collegiate athletics. A lot of that stuff was done for you. And then you go into your first, maybe you don't get drafted, but you go to your first mini camp. Dude, mini camp's like going to a tryout on your high school team. Like you got to bring your own gear. You got to do everything. In the NFL, they'll probably supply you a few things, but for the most part, like you're on your own for a lot of those amenities until you make a roster. Then you make a roster, sure,
Mm-hmm.
we'll give you all kinds of gear, do all that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of learning curve on that. There's a lot of things now that are occupying time for them when it used to just be practice my skill, learn my techniques, learn my plays, learn my whatever my team's doing, watch film like that. That was it. And now I got to do life on top of that. And so, it can be challenging. Well, you take someone that maybe is a bit more blue collar, that goes the route of say, someone trying to get onto a unit at the fire station. They may know how to do a lot of those things, but they're self-taught. And so when you're self-taught, you learn the bare minimum to be able to sustain life. I can keep myself alive. I can keep clean clothes on me. I can keep myself fed. I can show back up and clock in and go to work tomorrow. There's a difference between that and peak performance or consistent performance. Because I would say in a lot of those populations, you're not necessarily looking for peak performance. You're looking for consistent performance. Can they cognitively operate and make good decisions in those high stress environments? And so when people think training, we talked about this a minute ago, they think, like you said, weight room. Well, even if I'm thinking weight room, there's a strategy to how you address a barbell. There's a strategy to how you breathe and brace when you're touching something. There's a strategy with how you breathe differently when you're trying to recover from the work that you just did. There's a strategy around maintaining your focal point so you're not mentally wandering around in between sets. You're starting to refocus and dial in on what's to come. Really similar to a high stress situation if a building was on fire. Like you're going to do some tasks, they're going to be exhausting, things are going to distract you. How much can you bring that mental acuity back into focus and regain your composure, calm your breathing down so you can focus on the next task at hand before you're safely out of harm's way and the event is over with, right? So it's just a matter of how you process and think about training, because all those things can be trained. All those things can be practiced and rehearsed. They can also be avoided, which a lot of folks like to do when it comes to the nuance and the harder stuff. It's like, I'll just show up on game day and I'll just gut it. I'll just gut it out. Well, I mean, how many events, emergency events do you guys see in a week?
Oh, man, I mean,
Like
luckily,
what's
we're in a newer part of a town, so it's not a ton, but most of our stuff's EMS related,
yeah.
but we run more than the average human should, for the amount of training that people do.
You figure there's 52 weeks in the year. Let's say you get called twice in a week, which probably sounds like a slow week. I'm sure there's some crazy weeks where you're getting called twice a day, every day.
Mhm.
But for the sake of that, twice a week for 52 weeks. And then do that times 15 years. Like you've experienced a ton of emergency events in that time frame. So you can't just be ready for one. You got to be ready for hundreds and hundreds of them. And then the ability to bounce back between them, some highly traumatic. So having the ability to mentally reframe things so that you keep your own composure and you can still live a normal life. You can go home and be a normal person and not drag all your work baggage home, and things that lead to mental breakdowns and depression and things along those lines. So training how you physically culture yourself and equip yourself with different means to navigate your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, how we get into fight or flight, or how we're able to relax and recuperate. Those are all skills, and I would say highly valuable, especially for folks whose job and lifestyle requires them to be in high stress environments constantly, consistently, over and over again. And so I know that's a hard sell sometimes. You get a new kid coming out of the academy, or even an old timer that's been doing it for a while and can't figure out why his back hurts all the time or his neck hurts all the time and he can't turn his head. Um, you know, but they don't ever want to point the finger at habits and how they're taking care of themselves. It's the job. The job's doing. It's my helmet. It's my pack. It's my gear. It's never the preparation.
Yep, we joke about it. There's certain parts of the year, obviously, we don't try to train in super hot conditions, obviously, when it's above 100 degrees or whatever, just kinda load management and those type of,
Yeah,
um, extreme weathers, whatever. So you'll get some guys that'll get back on the training ground and they'll wear their helmet, like, "Man, my neck is sore." I'm like, "Ah, it's because I had my helmet on for the last 4 hours." Like, I haven't done that in a long time. So,
mm,
yeah, it's a little, you know, I think you hit the nail on the head perfectly, like, in that everything you just said, I see so much in a real life application for the department and the guys that I'm with, and luckily, I'm at a department where we are very proactive, we are very forward thinking, we are really focused on training and trying to think of every scenario that we may run into just in case so we can have all those tools in our toolbox whenever that situation may arise, whether it's a structure fire, a car fire, EMS, terrible call, whatever it may be. Um, we have all those tools ready to pick and pull from.
yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, it's nice to see these days. Like a lot of these departments and things are getting a bit more proactive when it comes to preservation of the human resource. And there's actually two of my former interns, assistants, when I was at the University of Michigan, run one of the largest departments, fire departments in Denver, up in Denver, Colorado. And they have two full time strength coaches that live in the firehouse with them. Um, and so these guys are managing training
That's
programs. They have a
awesome.
dietitian that's in there as well. It's helping to do meal planning and doing like education sessions in the kitchen in there. So, everyone, depending on where you're at, like they're going to put different resources in front of you. But then you may not have certain resources. And if you don't, then that's, to me, it's just a little bit of initiative then to go and find that resource somewhere, find that education in that somewhere. And nowadays,
Yeah, you
there's
there?
really no good excuse, man. This stuff is so accessible. It's everywhere. If you do a little bit of research and a little diligence and digging around, no matter how rural you are or how far away you are, if you've got an internet connection, you can find stuff.
Absolutely. Yep. So since we've kind of just cracked into it and we started just rolling, which I love. It's fun to be able to us always talk with like-minded people, and share experiences and different perspectives and whatnot. Um, so as I said in the intro, you were my strength coach at Belhaven, and you truly, and this is no bullshit, like you truly opened my eyes to the weight room. And obviously, I trained in high school, trained in JUCO, but it was the football coaches training us. We didn't have, you were my first true strength coach. and the attention to detail that you put on how do we lift? Why are we doing this? Um, and then this is while we're training for, and it truly it really made me appreciate and love the weight room for everything that it could be. I mean, everything from you locking that door and not letting us up in until it was time for our lifts, so people couldn't run in late and be like, "Oh, I was here." And all. I still used all that shit whenever I was coaching. Like, no, y'all are gonna sit in the hallway and y'all are gonna wait till it's time, and I'm gonna bring you in, and we're gonna go straight to it. And but thinking back to the Belhaven days, what are some memories that you have? Obviously, you were still really young in your career. You had just got out of Southern Miss.
Yep.
Um, like, what are those? What was success back in the day for you?
Yeah, I think there were two things when I first came on because I kept hearing a reoccurring theme. As soon as I got there, I met with 14 different head coaches, and I kept hearing this reoccurring theme. There were those that have previously had access to everything, and they could, whether they were doing it on their own or had a third party doing it for them. They got the weight room when they wanted to. They ate when they wanted to. They got practices when they want. And then there was this whole other 10, 11 sports that always felt like they weren't getting that much service. They couldn't get access to the weight room. They couldn't get access to it. And so one of my biggest missions was I don't want anyone to be able to tell a difference. I want everyone to experience if whatever wow experience I can create, I want it to be a consistent. Doesn't matter if you're the tennis team, the football team, the cross country team. They're going to get a consistent feel in terms of the amount of service, the amount of contact time that they get, if they think that's important. And so it was very evident right away. There wasn't a coach there that didn't think it was important. Every single one of them. Some were more organized than others, and I think that was a great educational experience for me, is working with different level coaches. Some that really had a clear vision and not just a clear vision for how they wanted to play the game and win, but a clear vision on how they wanted to use me and utilize what I could bring to the table. There were some that had no idea. They're like, I've never had a strength coach before. I don't know. You tell me. Like, how do we do this? And so
Mhm.
kind of maneuvering some of that. So it was a massive learning curve for me. I honestly have reflected on this a ton. I could not have asked for a better place to cut my teeth because I was the least experienced coach on that campus. Every coach there had more experience than me. So there were opportunities to learn everywhere that I turned around. Jeff Martinez, who's our athletic trainer, along with Elliot Carter and a couple others, those guys had more experience than me. And so being able to pick up off of those guys from a maintenance standpoint, rehab standpoint, that was just the tip of the iceberg for me, being able to integrate with other professionals that were surrounding our team. So those were big, like marquee moments. I wouldn't say I mastered a lot of those things while I was there, but it slapped me in the face saying, you need to get good at this stuff. This is the stuff you need to spend the next 20 years of your life figuring out, because this is the difference in terms of the amount of quality product you're going to put in front of the athletes that you're working with. So yeah, that was it was it was challenging, it was tough, and those kind of things you can only do them in certain stages of your life, right? I mean, I was making like $21,000 a year. I was easily working 85 hours a week. So before, eventually in my last year there, I was able to get a GA, but prior to that, man, it was a one man show. I was there at 4:30 in the morning to set up the field, but then my first session happened in the weight room at 5:30 or 6. But as soon as that session was over, I was busting it to the field to work with the soccer team or somebody else, and back over to the weight room, and then over to the tennis courts, and so just constantly moving around. And it was fun as hell. I would say even at 24, 25 years old, when I got home at the end of the day, dude, I pounded a shake or ate whatever dinner I was going to eat, and I literally just melted into the couch. I mean, I was exhausted every day because it was nonstop, one after another. And if I wasn't in a training session, I
Yep.
was at a practice. If I wasn't at a practice, I was at a game or at a match or at a tournament or something. Um, so it was, a lot of times when people start their careers, a lot of my colleagues, they started an entry level assistant somewhere. And so they kind of get very manageable micro doses of these responsibilities over time, almost like a training plan.
Mhm.
It's progressive, right? And I see the benefit in that. I think that I had a little bit of an advantage because I got fed through a fire hose with high expectations from head coaches that had more experience than me from day one. So it was sink or swim. And so I really appreciate that time. Um, it's also been incredible to see in that little time frame, 2005 to 2007 at Belhaven College, what some of those athletes in that little 2 year time frame have gone on to do blows my mind. And I love that they stay active in terms of like social media and things, and they'll stay active with reaching out. But folks like yourself, there's examples of some that have gone on to be troopers in the state police in Texas. Some that have gone on to be strength coaches. Some have gone on to be head football coaches, high school head football, state championship winning football coaches. Others that have gone on to coach basketball. Some that have gone on to there's a young lady who's coaching a big like travel volleyball club in her town. It's like the largest club in the town. So it's been really cool to see what's come out of just, I mean, you're talking at the time, I think total, we only had like 420 athletes in the athletic department. So in those
Yeah.
420 in that 2 year chunk of time, some of the ones that have gone on to do some really cool things, that's been super rewarding. And, just like kind of hearing your testimony, hearing them talk about how much their physical fitness and their lifestyle is a priority around being physically healthy. That's awesome to hear. In a world there, I would say the general population is declining in that aspect. To know that there was a little bit of influence on a small population of athletes during that time that took that with them, and they're trying to weaponize it in their everyday life right now. I mean, couldn't ask for a better return than that.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, everything you said that you experienced, I felt like I experienced the exact same thing in 2011 when I started being the strength coach there.
Yeah.
Um, and just like you said, you got 14 sports, they're all looking to you. And I'm just like, I've said it before in the past, like, my goal is to not kill anybody and get anybody injured because
Right.
I'm just relying on
Yeah.
pure, just like emotions
Sure.
sometimes of like, oh, I'm overwhelmed.
It's like
And
bringing your first kid home from the hospital, man. Like they're gonna let you walk out the door. You have no idea what you're doing. You're just like, I just hope I can keep alive. I can sustain life, and then we'll just kind of learn as we go. And that there's a little bit of that, um, for sure.
yeah, me and Mallory joke about it all the time that like she only worked out because of you.
Mm,
Like she was on the basketball team, and when you had summer workouts where all the athletes would train together,
yeah,
like the workout was because of you. Like you created that environment of they like if we do what he says, we're gonna get better. Like all we have to do is just commit
yeah,
and just give our effort and we'll get better. And that's where me and her met was that summer workouts. And we were running, I don't know if it was like half gassers or something.
yeah.
And she called my ass out. Like she was like, quit missing time. You're making us run extras. I'm like, oh man. Like so
Hey,
actually
those who suffer together
here,
stay together.
talk about some nostalgia.
Yes, sir. That's cool to see,
That
man.
was your summer pro. That was
I
so for
got
those that are watching, that was his summer manual that he made for all the athletes. Um, and he, I mean, went above and beyond more than he probably should have just to make sure we had this is the plan, this is how what I want you to do, these are the sets and reps, these are the like how to do the drills. I mean, obviously way before any technology was really accessible to open up an app or
yeah.
be have it at your fingertips. So
Sure. Yeah, man. I have one copy of that left that I keep in my office at home, and it's cool to see that.
that's awesome. So the I as you were talking and you were talking about some of the people that we got to, cross paths with and all the great things, you were so I'm a kind of toot your horn a little bit. Like you were so ahead of your time with your I guess I'll just say training styles or willing to learn and be able to educate yourself. Um, because I walk in and you and Steiner and other guys are doing 300 workouts because the movie just came out, and y'all are doing whatever workout just to try to get Gerard Butler abs and stuff like that. But it was also like the beginning of CrossFit.
Yeah.
But where you really opened my eyes was everything was technique based. And then you taught me about Olympic lifts. And fundamentally, I truly believe Olympic lifts have um, revolutionized how I see training. And I say that, and it goes back to a conversation. We were at the national convention. It was me, you, and I think, pretty sure it was Kendrick Ferris he was doing one of his training sessions at one of the booths, and we were talking about CrossFit and and I said something along the lines of making my athletes learn a hang clean or a power clean or stuff like that. And him being Olympic, I mean, for y'all that don't know who Kendrick Ferris is, Shreveport, Louisiana, Team USA, Olympic weightlifter. Um, Dude was a stud. I think it was 94 kilo weight class that he was in,
Yeah.
like
Well, 85,
clean and jerked like
85 before that.
208.
Yeah.
Yeah. That weight class back then was like the who's who of the men.
Yeah.
Like they were brutal for who can get Olympic spots.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
but
a real legend.
yeah, for sure. Me being a dumb GA at the time, he questioned me. He put me on the spot and he was like, "Why are you teaching them that?" Knowing like this is his bread and butter. And I was like, "Well, if I can teach them how to do that, I don't have to teach them how to do a deadlift. I don't have to teach them how to do a shrug. I don't have to teach them how to do a front squat. We can just, once they learn how to do all those things, we can just do it all in one exercise." And he was like, "Cool, you'll make it, kid." And I was like, "Sweet, Kendrick Ferris just said I'll make it." Like,
Yep. That's all you need is somebody to pour a little gas on the fire.
Yeah, and another story along that. So when I was doing the testing, and we do our written test at the convention, and then we go in and we do the question, and we have our programs and stuff. I sit down, and it's Pat Ivy. Pat Ivy's sitting right in front of me, and I don't know who he is. He's just a large human being with the deepest voice I've ever heard, and he goes, "All right, so your program was women's basketball off season, and I see you told them to do these sets and reps. I'm an incoming freshman. I've never been in a weight room before. Teach me how to bench. Go." And I was like, "Oof," and I kind of froze for a second. I was like, "What's a bench press?" And I'm going, and you know how it's kind of like rapid fire, and so they're kind of over talking each other. The three of them. Yeah, it is like speed dating, and so I go down. He goes, "What's one of the biggest issues with female benching?" I was like, "Spotters and them picking their feet up off the ground whenever they start to struggle." And he goes, "It's the best answer I've heard all freaking day. What do you want to talk about now?" I'm like, "I'm not falling into this trap. Like, we're not like we got like 8 minutes left. I need to keep going." And he was like, "No, we're done. You answered the question the best way I could hear it." And he's like, "That's all I need to hear," because it truly goes back to athlete safety, teaching them the proper techniques, making sure you got spotters, and and it was things like that to hear a master and a legend like himself be like, and it kind of gave me a boost of confidence going back home after that and being like, okay, like I can do this if I focus on the right things and teach people the right techniques and stuff like that. So
Yep. I always say, I mean, to this day, like when people ask about a teaching progression about anything, sprinting, jumping, lifting, a particular lift, whatever, it's the same sequence of events. It's positional accuracy first, transition second, speed and load comes last. You apply speed and load to poor positions, it just looks like a sloppy, unorganized mess. You start to transition between two shitty positions instead of two good positions, it looks like an unorganized mess. And if you walk into a room, and you've been in a few different weight rooms now, and even looking at some of your colleagues that you work with, you can tell the difference watching someone if they've ever been coached or not, or how well they've been coached.
100%.
Based on, even if they're learning a skill, those that have been coached well, they learn skills differently. They're more rehearsed. They're more intentional. Someone that's just kind of, for lack of a better word, dicking around something that they're not familiar with. They don't have a process on how they learn things. They don't have a process on how they dive into something. It's just kind of like, all right, I'm going to just jump in there and we'll see how, if I sink or swim. So yeah, a very process oriented way in learning. It's real simple. Positional accuracy first, transition second, speed and load comes last. You have to earn those. Like you want to move faster, you have to move accurately first. You want to move more weight, you have to move accurately first. Like you have to earn those pieces to the puzzle.
Yep. I agree 100%. So when you left us in '07, um, so I guess transitioning into '08, you went to the Olympic Village and training facilities. What was your not really eye opening, but what was your biggest takeaway from that experience of how elite Olympians train for their I mean, they train 4 years for potentially a 9-second, 10-second race or a swim or a throw or, whatever their skill set is. Um, what was your biggest takeaway of their preparation and how, they attacked their training? And then also what made really, really good athletes versus the elite ones?
Yeah. Um, I would say what I got slapped in the face with first. Well, one, what I recognized was I just drowned in a ton of responsibility at Belhaven for a couple of years and got told that I did a fairly decent job. But in my head, I'm like, man, there's so many of those things that if I was going to master them, I would need to literally jump down some rabbit holes. So when I got to the OTC, that right away I could recognize, oh, I'm actually going to get the opportunity to get super granular with some specific things here. Weightlifting being one of those things, energy systems being another one, where I was going to get to really go dive down some deep rabbit holes on understanding this stuff and coming up with ways to instruct and coach this stuff. Um, when you look at the difference between what some of those really elite or one percenters are and what they act like compared to the rest that are pretty good, um, a lot of it, man, is their conviction and their daily behavior. Like every waking moment is singularly focused on this one thing. Whereas the ones that are just a few percentage points behind, they just got a few more distractions. They had other interests. They got other things. They have a little more doubt. They have a little more, haven't quite proven to themselves that they're at that level yet. Whereas those that are elite, they are convinced. You can't talk them out of it. You can't put a jury in front of them to prove them wrong, that they're not the next world champion. They're not the next medal contender. And so there's a difference in terms of their behavior and just their language, how they talk and how they speak, how they think of themselves, the standards that they put on themselves. When you look at the transition, the differences, what I was experiencing compared to athletes at like a Belhaven College or a Southern Mississippi, is the intrinsic motivation was through the roof. They didn't need anyone to tell them where to be, when to be, how to do. Like all they needed was instruction and roadmaps. That was it. Help me with the strategy. All the intrinsic motivational stuff, they had that. I mean, they which was really interesting and eye opening to see. Um, and still from a variety of demographics, if you look at a sport like shooting, they come from a very white collar, more high class kind of backgrounds and things like that versus boxing that comes from inner cities and underprivileged kids and things along that. Same intrinsic motivation, same high standard work ethic, just two different genres of sport. And so it was really eye opening to see the variety of skill sets, but the standard of operation in terms of elite versus not elite. Look, man, it was just super enlightening just to get around a ton of different sports that I'd never even seen on TV, let alone seen in person. Being able to get in the pool with the national water polo team, like I didn't even know what water polo was, never heard of it. Growing up in the Southeast, like we don't have water polo. It's predominantly a Western sport or European sport. Getting around in depth in things like judo and fencing, they were just new, heard of them and had some familiarity, but never been around it. Definitely not at an amateur level, let alone an elite level. So another massive educational step. I talked about just the exposure and how much education there was at Belhaven because I was the least experienced coach there, to then go into the OTC, another massive educational step because now there were things I'd never seen before. But then on top of that, things that I was interested in studying or I really had the opportunity to dive down some deep rabbit holes with some really, really what you would call experts in the world on those things. The guy that was running our lab and our high altitude training summit was Dr. Randy Wilbur, who ran all of the training and assessments for Team Discovery, back in the Lance Armstrong days. So if you wanted to understand blood oxidation and the O2 endurance system and how the glycolytic system bleeds into it and how they feed off of each other, like I was in the epicenter of it. Like that was the guy to be around. Being around that national weightlifting training hall, I mean, the best weightlifters in the country were there. And if they weren't there, they were passing through there in training camps 2 or 3 times a month. And so being around not just our resident coaches, but the coaches that would come with the transient athletes from all over the country and learning a bit more about weightlifting heritage in the U.S. on top of skills and strategies and periodization models. And I would say the same for wrestling. While I was there, 2 things I capitalized on was I got a level 2 international coaching experience in weightlifting, and then I was able to get a level 2 accreditation in USA Wrestling. And those 2 things ended up paying massive dividends in my career later on in one way or another, because I used weightlifting pretty formidably in different strategies of programming, and wrestling and the familiarity with wrestling and weight cutting sports. Judo falls into that category as well. Obviously, and that served me well when it came time to have an opportunity with the UFC later on in my career. So it was a tremendous learning experience. And I would say nothing that I've achieved in my career would have happened without those first 2 steps, Belhaven and the OTC.
Yeah, I was honored, even though I had just met you, only knew you for a short time. I was honored to think like, oh, I know somebody that's training XYZ athletes, and it was really cool to be able to, whenever you make the transition out of that phase into the collegiate athletes. And I'm gonna skip over the Michigan years for right now because I'm gonna kind of ask questions based off of where you're at now. But being able to be in the performance institute when you get that opportunity, obviously you've got 10, 15 years under your belt now of coaching different, all plethora of sports. You've cracked your teeth into whole new sports again at Michigan. um, when you get to UFC, like, yeah, you had that background and you were always a wrestler. Like I mean, I don't know how much training you had back when you were at Belhaven, but we were always wrestling on the field. Like somebody was always trying to get you, and not too many
Somebody's
people
always
got
trying
you.
to grab me.
Um,
I swear.
but when you get out there, is that kind of just like a reset?
Honestly, so to put it in perspective, at that time, um, if you tried to research peer-reviewed material on MMA, at that time, this was 2017, there were only like 3 or 4 papers worldwide on the sport. You
Mm.
know what I mean? So if you were going to try to research it and understand how do I train a fighter, there just wasn't a lot of information out there. And so to be at the ground floor of, we'll call it sport performance for professional fighting at the time, um, and doing it with the largest fight company on earth, that was the opportunity. It was like, wow, okay, how many opportunities do you have to start with an elite sport at the ground level? It'd be like starting a
Yep.
new NFL and getting to work with them from scratch, except doing it when the NFL has never existed. Like there's no other elite football that exists. Well, that's kind of where MMA was at the time. So I was like a kid in a candy store, and just that opportunity of being on the ground floor with other elite professionals and trying to create this body of work for a genre of
Mhm.
sport that was so popular already, but just didn't have this formal understanding of training. Don't get me wrong. there were strength coaches and performance professionals out there in small pockets that were working with small groups of athletes, but the information wasn't being shared. And there was no, you couldn't go to an NSCA and get educated on how to train a fighter. Like, that didn't exist. And so that's what we were trying to build and accumulate, was systems for better preparing fighters, but at the same time helping these fighters that were currently on the roster better prepare for their upcoming matches, and sustain longer careers. And that was the other big one for us, was trying to eliminate this really fast attrition rate. Because it was like there was a threshold, like if you made it through your first 2 contracts, then a lot of those fighters would last 6, 7, 8+ years. If you didn't make it through your first 2 contracts, it's like you're out of the sport. Like they didn't go to another league. They were either injured or they were banged up. They just couldn't sustain. And so trying to figure out, like, whether you're successful or not, how are we getting these athletes to just last longer? So like any other sport, you can play your sport, and then when you're done, you can go live life. And so that's kind of what some of our side mission was. But ultimately, when we got there, we had to break down, what does it take to win in MMA? And so when you do a quick needs analysis on it, number one, if you don't make weight, you can't make money. So there's no fight commission that's going to let you compete if you can't make weight. So that was prerequisite number one. They've got to have a weight management system in place. So we need to understand that at a really high level, what weight cutting is, what weight management is, what weight mitigation looks like. And then the other one was, we needed to know, like, what in the fighter's eyes, what causes them the most anxiety? Like, what do they fear the most? So we did a ton of consultations in the beginning. And one of the things I kept getting answers on when I would ask them this, like, what do you fear the most? Number one was not making weight, because they know if they don't make weight, I don't make money. And then number two was gassing out. It's like the worst way you could lose a fight was because of fatigue. Like, it's like the most dishonorable way to lose. They're like, I'd rather get knocked out, or I'd rather get pummeled to death than to lose because I got tired. And so right away, those became 2 big training objectives. One, we need a weight management system in place for this particular athlete. So we need to understand them metabolically so that we can understand how to manage mass, whether it's lean tissue, soft tissue, whatever, so they can make their weight category. And then the other one was energy system development, in terms of, how do they fight stylistically? Because we burn energy differently when we wrestle and grapple compared to when we're boxing and kickboxing. Clinch work has a whole different energy expenditure, and you got transitions or scrambles within the fight, which are high expenditure. So understanding those things so we can help put a system in place to condition for somebody for the type of matchup they were about to see. If you're fighting someone that never wrestles or grapples, you could potentially avoid that. Or offensively, you could press wrestling. You could push a lot of wrestling to someone that doesn't want to wrestle. So the strategy dictated what our priority list would look like. The strategy and the needs analysis based on the matchup. So that way of thinking, it just resonated with me, because I would get some insights from coaches at Belhaven or coaches at the OTC. I would get some insights in terms of how they want their athlete to perform. And that would be part of my needs analysis. Well, now at the UFC, I wasn't only getting insights from coaches, I was getting insights from the fighter themselves. The fighter is the head coach in most cases. So based on where they build their confidence from, how they want to fight, how they want the fight to go, we build strategies to support that based on how they stylistically want to try to pick this other person apart. Now, there were some times where some of their strategies or theories on how they were going to win the fight were pretty idiotic. Like, you take a guy who is not a thoroughbred striker, and they're telling you they're fighting the best striker in their division, and they're telling you they're going to knock him out. And you're like, okay, we need to come up with a better strategy. I'm not saying you can't knock him out, but I'm saying, like, we got to plan we're planning for worst case scenario. So worst case scenario, you don't knock him out, and this is going to go 15 minutes. Like, we need to prepare for that. And those are some of the hardest conversations, because then you affect their confidence. Like, what, you don't believe I can do it? And it's like, no. It has nothing to do with my belief. We have to choose a strategy on how we're going to prepare. Well, if I just prepare you for 90 seconds because I'm banking you're going to put one on his chin and he's going to go to sleep, what happens after the 90 seconds? look, I did my part. You're on your own, kid. Like, figure it out. Like that's not a plan for preparation. So having those conversations was really tough. I learned more about the psychology of athletes during those days, I think, than any other time, because the conversations and being a part of the strategy was so much more intimate compared to some of those other team sport scenarios. Um, so super beneficial. Again, another massive learning curve. The other thing, kind of like the OTC, man, the professionals that I was surrounded with at the UFC were the best in the industry. I mean, our lead of performance was Dr. Duncan French, just a brilliant, massive, big brain guy, who was a former strength coach and PhD in physiology, and Dr. Roman Fomin, who's a Russian sports scientist, high level of education. I have never heard someone not only break down energy systems, but investigate continuously, rigorously energy system development and how people expend energy. To this day, he's still doing it. He's innovating better ways to assess it, better ways to evaluate it, and better ways to influence it. He's
Wow.
brilliant. Dr. Heather Linden, our physical therapist, she might be one of the best physical therapists in the world. I've been around some really good PTs. She's just on another level. She takes the cake. So yeah, I was surrounded by professionals. It's be tough. It's like the Avengers. It's just tough to accumulate that group of people anywhere else.
Evolution of how things were when you were there to where they are now. Can you see some of the um, foundation, the groundwork that y'all laid, still um, growing and being used today as you watch some of your former athletes and people you stay in touch with?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's no question they've evolved even beyond when we were there, but still have pretty close ties there and stay involved, not only with the crew at the UFCPI, but quite a few fighters as well. Still act as a consultant, a little bit of a liaison with some of those fight teams. Yeah, I mean, like any other sport, I mean, they're driven. They're gonna continue improving their methods and how they prep, and um, we get to reap the benefits of that. In fact, we got a good one coming up this Saturday. It's going to be another exciting fight card. So yeah, that sport is just going to continue to grow. It's when I first got there, the big deal was getting that fight card in 2017 into Madison Square Garden, and New York was the last of the 50 states in the U.S. to legalize MMA. And I remember a few years later when we had our first fight card in Paris, France, and it was the first time it was legal in Paris. And so now, the UFC is in over 40 countries. So yeah, the growth is exponential. It's just going to keep growing.
All right, so I'm gonna start a new segment called Hotspots. So at the end of, if we're on a fire scene or whatever, we got to do that salvage and overhaul. We got to check for hotspots. So I'm gonna start a new segment. It's gonna be 5 questions. We're gonna hit the hotspots. I'm a rapid fire. No, I'm just first thing that comes to your mind, first answers you got. All right.
All
So number
right.
one, biggest myth in the strength and conditioning field.
Oh, goodness. Biggest myth. Lifting weights is going to make me bigger.
I like it. Most overlooked part of performance.
Capacity.
Capacity and what? Like, sorry, I don't. I mean, that's a
Yeah. So everything requires capacity, right? Yeah. Yeah, so I think this gets overlooked a lot. So again, back to people doing something one time, they're like, "I did this thing." It's like, well, do you have the capacity to do it again? Because jobs or even sports and events and sports, they all have a requirement to repeat, right? So can you do it repeatable on demand when necessary, not just the one time in your basement when you had your cell phone on recording it?
Gotcha.
So yeah, they got to have capacity, and capacity can be a lot of things, like the strength capacity, endurance capacity, skill capacity, mental fortitude. There's a capacity to everything, but it's one of the most overlooked things. It's again back to this. I arbitrarily completed this, like I did this. Great. Do you have the capacity to do it again?
Gotcha. All right. You got all the knowledge you currently possess today. You go back to the beginning. where you want, like, what's your ideal dream start? Like, what sport, what field, what level? Like, what is your, if you could just get in at any level, where would you, in what sport, what would it be?
Yeah, it would be high school. It'd be high school sports. I think that the emphasis needs to be on grassroots. I had a quick exposure back in 2012. I got to speak in Mongolia, in China, to a wrestling federation, and they gave me a tour of some different high schools in their area. And as we were touring these, I was talking to a superintendent of those schools, and their schools are sports schools. So you go to this school because you are a wrestler, and you go to this school because you're a basketball player. Like, the schools are centered around specific genre of sport. Well, so I asked them, I'm like, how do you hire your coaches? How do you select coaches? And they had a fascinating answer for me. It was that their most experienced coaches in their countries that have already moved on and coached either professional sports or Olympic sports, before they retire, they come back to the grassroots and they coach for 5 or 6 years before they go into retirement. So they're taking their most experienced, knowledgeable coaches and putting them with their grassroots athletes so they have the best information when they're getting started. Whereas if you look at the US, we typically have that backwards. We usually have the least experienced coaches, or those that don't have that much of a pedigree in coaching our grassroots level athletes. Not always, but more times than not. So yeah, if I had a chance to take my experience and put it in my 24-year-old self, I'd be working with grassroots in high school.
That's awesome. All right, last question. If you could pick your perfect hunt, equipment, and like bucket list, where is it? What are you hunting for, and what are you using?
Oh man, it's tough to do one. So there's more, and some that are more ambitious. But I would say traditional archery, spot and stalk whitetail would be, to me, if you can spot and stalk a whitetail with a trad bow, particularly in the southern states, um, it's a high level of skill, high level of patience, and a high level of luck, all coming at a crossroads. So that would be, I could really hang a hat on that if I was ever able to do that.
That's awesome. Well, Coach, I much appreciate your time. I much appreciate you carving out part of your day for me. We'll definitely have to, get together, maybe do something in person or do another episode if you're down with that.
Absolutely, man. Andrew, it's been good to catch up, and let me know. I'd be down to do a 2.0 version. Super proud of you. It's cool seeing like the podcast. I've been staring at the logo the whole time we've been yapping the shift change logo. So it's cool to see you build that. I'm curious to watch it grow. So keep doing what you're doing.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. For y'all that are listening, all Coach Sandoval's socials and credentials and his experience will all be in the description below. We're going to wrap up this episode like we do all episodes. Every shift, my goal is the station captain. All my guys go home. And my goal is everybody comes back. Be the reason somebody shows up to their next shift.